a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to this special report from the Daily Australian. I am Jason Olbourne, and that is not Nicola Charles. In fact, it's Josh Bernstein joining me from the United States for this very special report on, of course, the Israeli attacks on Iran. Josh Bernstein is a TV talk show host. He is a news anchor and political commentator. Josh has been a guest on over 4,000 radio shows over the last 11 years. Has been called a political savant by the late American radio legend Barry Farber. And you can find him on Substack these days, jbushow.substack.com. Josh Bernstein, welcome to the Daily Australian.
Great to be on the program with you again, Jason.
Yeah, good to see you, Josh. And we had a ripper of a show the other night for the 51st state. But as it turns out, wouldn't believe it, we've just found out just today, it's late in the US, very early in Israel, but Israel has struck Iran. Some big news that's coming out of what's happening. They've hit, as we understand, nuclear facilities. What have you picked up on the latest out of the US?
Well, look, for many years, Israel has been dealing with the proxies of Iran, and now they're dealing with the head of the snake itself. And what they have done has been excellent from a standpoint of strategy. They have gone after the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They have wiped out at least a few of the leaders. They have also simultaneously taken out a few of their major nuclear scientists as well. They have hit Natanz with, I would assume, bunker-busting bombs, which the United States gave about 1,000 to Israel for this very purpose. And from the defense minister in Israel, he has said that this had to be because the Iranians were not a week away, a month away, 6 months away, or a year away from enriching uranium. They were days away. And so because of the urgency factor, they had to do this. And they are doing it right now. They're not going to stop. They have said this is a point too far, meaning that they can't turn back. And they're going to deal with the largest state sponsor of terrorism once and for all.
Yeah, it's quite massive, isn't it? Because there's a lot of feeling around the world, so much confusion about what's going on. And when you look at Israel and the Palestinian situation there in Gaza, and people can see arguing heavy-handedness, for example, but at the same time not wanting to look at both sides of the story, if you will, and not remembering the October 7 attacks for what they really were. And then looking, of course, as you said, the proxy state of Iran, of course, funding Hamas in that circumstance. And there were comments earlier from Ted Cruz also mentioning that Israel took out Hezbollah. And so you have a Middle East that seems to be in real turmoil at the moment. And for one nuke to go off in such a concentrated area is going to wipe out multiple countries and millions of people. So it just seems ludicrous. And as Ted Cruz also said, you've got Iran who says that they want to eliminate Israel. And as he also said, when you say that someone wants to kill you, you better believe it. And therefore, this is why it seems that partly the support that the US gives to Israel at this point. What I'd like to do to bring people up to speed now is we've got a couple of clips prepared. And what I might do is just play for you, first of all, the CNN report, just to get the latest. And it is a little bit, maybe a few minutes old. I'll play that short. It's only a shorty. And then we'll go to the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, for a bit more of the detail of what's actually taken place here.
Caitlin, something I just heard from a senior Israeli official who says that according to Israeli assessments, there are very high chances that the entire Iranian general staff, including the head of the Iranian general staff of the Iranian military, and several senior Iranian nuclear scientists were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes tonight. I hear that again from a senior Israeli official who says that several senior top Iranian military commanders, including the head of the general staff of the Iranian military and senior nuclear scientists, have all been targeted in those strikes. And according to IDF assessments, there's a high chance that they've been eliminated.
I mean, that is really striking intelligence, if that is accurate.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Nuclear scientists taken out there. Obviously, reports only at this stage, but this is a big deal. They have hit and hit hard, Josh.
They have. Look, they they had to hit Natanz. Natanz is the #1 location for their nuclear program where they enrich uranium. Now, a lot of what they're doing is way underground, miles underground. And that is where the bunker busters come in, because they can drop these gigantic bombs and they can get down there and destroy these nuclear facilities. And that is what they are doing. But, look, this whole thing, if you think about it, the strategy of Israel right now is absolute genius. Because what are they doing? #1, they're hitting the nuclear facilities, right? They're probably going to have to go to the Bashir one as well, possibly Al-Quds, I don't know, maybe Parsons. Those aren't really active right now. But the main one is Natanz and Bashir, although Bashir's not nearly as active as Natanz is. But the thing is that this country has 90 million people in it, many of which, by the way, are very open to and friendly to Western civilization and United States and Europe. Many of them don't like to live under the tyranny in which they are forced to live under. Now, if you think about it, you have 90 million people. You have about 200,000 religious leaders, mullahs, ulemas, scholars, whatever you want to call them, clerics, all that. And then you have roughly about the same, 200,000 or so of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. Now, if you target the nuclear scientists, the nuclear facilities, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards all at once, well, the mullahs and the religious clerics and all that, they don't have anyone to protect them anymore. So in a lot of ways, the people of Iran can be free of their tyrannical government in a very short amount of time. And, everyone is, I'm sure the Iranian students, it's one of the most educated countries, most college graduates in Iran. And so a lot of these people just want to live their lives. They don't want to be in this theocracy and this theocratic way of life. And they want Western values and Western civilization. And so perhaps this could be a situation in which over time, very soon, there won't be anyone to stop an actual revolution within the country. This might have been the catalyst to get that started, and that they can overthrow their own government and replace it with something that's going to be peaceful and more freedom oriented. So, we're going to have to see what happens here. But I think overall, this was a situation in which Iran really was begging for this, if you think about it. I mean, death to Israel, death to America, all these different things. We remember Mahmoud Ahmadinejad back in the day said we want to wipe Israel off the map. So, just as Ted Cruz said, he's absolutely correct. When your enemy tells you they want you dead, take them at their word.
There's so many parts to this. There's so many pieces at play. And one of the hardest things, I think, for most people trying to consume what's happening is bringing personal bias to the table. And it is really difficult because a lot of people have this word Zionism. It seems to be the worst word in the world at the moment. And the interesting thing is that if you're trying to liberate any type of person, no matter who you are, Jew, Gentile, Muslim, Buddhist, there are good and bad in every race. And the thing is that the 99% of people are just good people trying to go to work, raise their family, and leave the world a better place than in which they arrived. And this is what I find so hard to take and so hard to communicate with people that think that they are each other's enemies when we all share the same values. But we're in a situation now that, sure, the United States as superpower has invented and has created, weapons of mass destruction, and Russia is in the same boat, and Israel has nuclear weapons. But if you actively threaten to eliminate one country over another, because this is not the case for these other superpowers, this is one of those lines in the sand that cannot be crossed. And the reason why. What I might do, Josh, is that let's go to this clip of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's quite long. We might not take the whole lot, but we'll get an introduction for the sentiment. Now, people will tune in and they'll tune out and they'll see Netanyahu and want to switch off. I encourage you to listen. We're going to pull it apart and we're going to be able to work out where we're going here. Now, there are going to be people calling this as World War III, and there are other people who are going to say, no, cool heads will prevail. I'm just going to make a little comment here. The sum of all fears, the idea that nuclear war could well be at our doorstep, is actually being prevented by these strikes, because the alternative is, with 9 nuclear warheads about to have enriched uranium to be set, then you have the real threat. This is maybe seconds to midnight. Let's go to Netanyahu now, and we'll come back shortly.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working on what it calls the new plan to destroy Israel. You see, the old plan failed. Iran and its proxies tried to encircle Israel with a ring of fire and to attack us with the horrible attack of October 7th. But the people of Israel, the soldiers of Israel, rose like lions to defend our country. We crushed Hamas, we devastated Hezbollah, we hit Iranian proxies in Syria and Yemen. And when Iran directly attacked us twice last year, we struck back inside Iran itself. Yet in defending ourselves, we also defend others. We defend our Arab neighbors. They too have suffered from Iran's campaign of chaos and carnage. Our actions against Iran's proxy Hezbollah led to the establishment of a new government in Lebanon and the collapse of Assad's murderous regime in Syria. The peoples of those two countries now have a chance for a different future, a better future. So too do the brave people of Iran, and I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near. And when that happens, the great friendship between our two ancient peoples will flourish once again. I want to assure the civilized world, we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons. And Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make the nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Remember, Iran calls Israel the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan. And this is why for decades, it's led millions in the chants of death to Israel and death to America. Today, Israel is responding to those genocidal calls with action and with a call of our own. Long live Israel and long live America. Our action will help make the world a much safer place. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in confronting Iran's nuclear weapons program. He has made clear time and again that Iran cannot have a nuclear enrichment program. Today, it is clear that Iran is just buying for time. It refuses to agree to this basic requirement of peaceful nations. That is why we have no choice but to act, and act now. The hardest decision any leader has to make is to thwart a danger before it is fully materialized. Nearly a century ago, facing the Nazis, a generation of leaders failed to act in time. They were paralyzed by the horrors of World War I. They were determined to avoid war at all costs, and they got the worst war ever. They adopted a policy of appeasement. They closed their eyes and ears to all the warning signs. That failure to act resulted in World War II, the deadliest war in history. It claimed the lives of 60 million, including 6 million Jews, a third of my people. After that war, the Jewish people and the Jewish state vowed, never again. Well, never again is now. Today, Israel has shown that we have learned the lessons of history. When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, stop them. As the Bible teaches us, when someone comes to kill you, rise and act first. This is exactly what Israel has done today. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves. Over 3,000 years ago, Moses gave the people of Israel a message that has steeled their resolve ever since. Be strong and courageous, he said. Today, our strong and courageous soldiers and people stand together to defend ourselves against those who seek our destruction. And by defending ourselves, we defend many others, and we roll back a murderous tyranny. Generations from now, history will record that our generation stood its ground, acted in time, and secured our common future. May God bless Israel. May God bless the forces of civilization everywhere. Thank you.
Substantial speech there. We did actually play the full 7 minutes for you, Josh. What's your take?
God bless, Netanyahu, still in control of the Likud party and still in control of Israel. Because, again, if there was a weaker leader, they may have hesitated. And if you hesitate in the face of evil, you become dead. And he understood that better than most. And his entire cabinet and the Likud party understood it as well. Now, for the folks that are watching this that maybe don't know me, obviously my name, Bernstein, yes, I am Jewish. But I just want to say that I am America first and Israel second. But Israel is our closest ally. And I know point blank that if, God forbid, anything ever happened to Israel, the United States, it would be the evangelical right, Christians of America, that would fight back against this type of evil. And so Iran is now hopefully not going to be a major threat anymore after this operation has come to its conclusion. And I think overall, we're going to have a more peaceful Middle East, not a more dangerous one. And one of the reasons that I say that is because there are a lot of countries right now, not to mention the Abraham Accords, but a lot of countries right now that are trying to do normalization of their relationships with the country of Israel. I wouldn't call them hardcore allies, and I certainly wouldn't trust them 100%, but at least they don't want them dead. And what I mean by that is you have Saudi Arabia, you have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have Qatar now, you have Kuwait, possibly Iraq. And so you have a lot of countries in the world that I think in this century and moving forward would rather work together to build peace and prosperity throughout the Middle East rather than tyranny and death.
It's a lot to take in, and of course, I feel like there's still this great big bias going on here, and people trying to work out what's happening. There's the threat, obviously, of imminent nuclear war, and that's the reason why Netanyahu said that the reason that they stroke now, strike, the Lion Force, etc., that they're talking about, Project Lion, if you will. The threat, and he says, and we're working for the people, including a tyrannical regime, etc. And this is about the liberty facing for everyone around the world. The idea that you just want to be able to raise your children and leave the world a better place for them. So, looking at what's going on now, and is it possible that people can see what's happening, or do they still bring the said bias to the table? And for example, let's address the elephant in the room. And this is what's really weird about it, is that there are people watching from all walks of life. So you've got pro-Trump people who are MAGA, and you've got pro-Trump people who are Q. And they're not the same people anymore. It's a different group. So all the people that are following the Q stuff are going, look, all of this stuff that's coming out, it's matching up. There was an announcement yesterday that matched up 7 years to the day. People are sharing this information. Now, the thing about it was that in those posts that seems to get noses out of joint was one particular post that said, saving Israel for last for a reason not mentioned here once. Now, I don't know if it means, and no one really knows what it means, but I don't know if it means it's to do with Jeffrey Epstein, links to Mossad, links to whatever, and control behind the scenes. But I don't think people are able to separate from what's actually going on here, and it's just a pile-on. Now, I know that there are bad people, and I know that when we talk about banking, control, etc., and you see famous names and Jewish people, and keep putting it into the same basket. So what I'm trying to say here is that when we're just talking about the news of the day, and I'm telling you that I'm aware of all this stuff, guys, that you're all aware of at the moment. And what I'm trying to do is work out with all of you, are we going to prevent nuclear war, or are we going to see nuclear war if that's where this is headed? And are we going to get justice? Because at the end of the day, good people are good people, bad people are bad people, and often good people will do bad things for bad people and for money. And I'm trying to dismantle all of that stuff here to work out how we can create said better world for ourselves if the leadership of the day is incapable of doing it. One thing's for sure, Josh, there is no status quo. We have now crossed that line. There is now change in the air. Have you got any comments on what I've just said there? And how do you sort of put that all together? Because you did address your heritage as a way of explaining yourself in just a few moments ago.
Well, look, as far as Q is concerned, all I will say about Q is it's the 17th letter of the alphabet. As far as everything else that you're referring to, you're right. There's good and there's bad in everyone. There's no question about that. But there's also ideological differences between different types of people. And so Jews a lot of times are, I guess, lumped into this one thing where it's all about Zionism, it's all about the banking systems and all these other things. I always laugh, and I really truly laugh when I hear people running around and screaming and hollering, Jews will not replace us. what are you talking about? There's 6.5 million Jews in the United States of America. There's 6.5 million Jews in Israel. And there's probably about maybe another million scattered around another 150, 160 countries. We're not replacing anyone, okay? I mean, seriously. So it's kind of ridiculous. But I talk about this a lot here in America in my show. You have the Catholic right and the Christian right, and you have the left. You have the Christian left. And the Christian left are obviously pro-choice. They believe in open borders. And so you have this cataclysm, if you will, this chasm between the church. And you have many people on the left side of the church and many people on the right side of the church. And I think with Jewish people as well, you have the conservative Jews like myself and many others. And then you have these radical, extreme liberal Jews that are on that other side. And so I see this from a standpoint of what's best for liberty. Okay. And clearly, if you're looking at what's going to be best for liberty, freedom, and peace, then that chasm has to be split. And the split is between, like I said, the left side and the right side. For my take, it's Christian conservatism and it's conservative Judaism, not liberal Judaism and far left Catholicism and Christianity. Because again, if we're going to look at what's going to be best for the overall world, then we have to understand that Israel, the United States, Europe, many of these countries, they are split. And the people that need to win the ideological battle are the ones that believe in peace and liberty and prosperity. And that, again, as I said earlier, is the religious right in America, the more religious people and the Jewish people in Israel and America. And we have to differentiate ourselves from the wild, radical, globalist leftists. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because a lot of people that are anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, whatever, they lump us all together. They think that the Bernie Sanders and the Bernie Madoffs and the Rahm Emanuels and the Gerald Nadlers and all these left-wing idiots are representative of the Jewish people. And it's not true. The majority that are religious don't buy into any of that stuff. And the same thing with the Christian right. And so I think there has to be that differentiation, because if there is, then it's clear to see that we can stop the hate and realize that everybody is a little bit different on each side. But the bottom line is the Christian right and Israel are one and one. And if, God forbid, the proverbial ever hit the fan, it wouldn't be the liberal Jews and the liberal Christians that would fight to protect Israel. It would be the Christians on the right, the evangelical rights, and the Jewish religious folks that would defend Israel and America.
Yeah, look, thanks for the perspective, Josh, and you make the obvious call there that you are about preserving liberty. For those that don't know, there's the book title there, Preserving Liberty, on the screen for you. Bold and Brave Solutions to Save America and Create Permanent Freedom. You can check that book out on Amazon. Or, Josh, I believe you have an offer also on your Substack page.
Yes, I do. Yes, you can go to Substack, become a subscriber, and you'll get a free PDF file of the book, Preserving Liberty. But if you want to go to Amazon, you can get your own hard copy of the book right now. There's a special right now for Father's Day weekend, so the price has been lowered for the weekend, so take advantage of that. And again, there's some major people that have endorsed this book. The great Alan Dershowitz for its constitutionality and accuracy. Roger Stone, who worked for 4 presidents, endorsed this book. Congressman Paul Gosar, a good buddy of mine from the Freedom Caucus, wrote the foreword to the book as well. So there's a lot of firepower. There's a lot of information in the book. We were just talking about immigration earlier today, and Joe Biden's, or the Autopen's, border czar chief was on the Will Cain show, I believe on Fox News, and he said point blank, look, this notion that there's 20 million illegal aliens in the United States of America, it's not true. And you know what? It's not true, because in my book, in chapter 3, which is Closing Our Borders, I explain and I go through data and statistics, facts that don't have an agenda. And I go from 1992 to 2024, January 2024, and I come up with statistical data that is accurate, that states that there are 51.4 million illegal aliens in the United States of America. The majority, 22 to 24 million, came here in the last 4 years with the open borders under the Otto Penn administration. Just to let you know how big of a number that is 15% of the entire United States population, and it is more than the total population of 33 states. That is the type of information you will find in Preserving Liberty.
It's extraordinary numbers, isn't it? It's just unbelievable. Shortly, we'll discuss that a little bit more, because there's a particular video clip that I want to show you from a chap that was just walking along and made a short video to describe the MO, if you will, of the purpose of illegal immigration. However, in the meantime, just to give you some more information, we're told that Iran said that it will surprise the world in the next few hours. That's from Iranian state media. You might see that on the bottom of the screen coming through. The fourth wave of our forces' attacks on the Islamic Republic is in full swing. That is from Israel. Reports indicate that a fourth wave of attacks by the forces against targets in Iran has begun. As we know, the attacks are targeting military and nuclear infrastructure, and explosions have been heard in several locations across the country. We're still waiting for officials in Iran to comment. Also, in some breaking news coming out of the United States, a U.S. appeals court has approved President Trump's request to retain authority over the California National Guard while this legal case proceeds, which was meant to have a hearing on the 20th, which was very interesting that the judge made this ruling, in particular when we know what's happening with the June 14th No Kings protest scheduled to take place, obviously at the weekend. So this is a big deal that President Trump has been able to maintain control of the National Guard, because one might expect, as we discussed when we spoke last time, Josh, those comments from Chief Stephen Sund, the U.S. Chief of Police, when he said he made 2 requests for National Guards, request for reinforcements on January 3 that were rejected, when we saw Nancy Pelosi say the other day that she said that Trump rejected it, which we know now is not true. So for Newsom to try and play the same game, but for that judge to overrule, is a significant point here. Just before we're going to go and show you a clip from Marco Rubio in a moment, but just a quick comment on what I've just said there, please, Josh.
Yeah, look, I saw this earlier. I was doing a Full Throttle Thursday, which is an event that I do every Thursday night, and I had my whole guest panel of people, that are supporters and supporters of the show, and we were all discussing it and talking about it, and that came in at the last minute. One of them said, "Hey, this just came in," and I said, "Don't even worry about that." I said, "That'll probably be overturned by tomorrow morning, because obviously he has the inherent authority and power vested in him as the chief executive, as the commander-in-chief, as the president of the United States, to issue the National Guard." I mean, this judge, by the way, not just a Clinton judge, but the brother of the former justice on the Supreme Court, very, very liberal Justice Stephen Breyer's brother, is who this judge was. And he made up this 36-page, gobbledygook, basically. And so they went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which typically is not that conservative. And even they stepped up and said, "What are you talking about? Of course he has the authority to do this." The fact that Gavin Gruesome Newsom did this on the eve after what has taken place in Los Angeles is absolutely abhorrent. And quite frankly, he needs to be investigated. He needs to be arrested, grand jury, an indictment, and he needs to be imprisoned, because he is inciting violence. That is a felony. He is obstructing justice. That is a felony. He is also interfering with an immigration proceeding. That is also a felony. So him and Karen Bass need to both be put in check. And the thing is that they're begging to be arrested, but what they want is sympathy. So if President Trump goes and arrests these people, it's going to be all over the news, and they're going to try to turn the legal Hispanics against President Trump for the midterms. Look, they have no power. They have no policies. They have nothing going for them other than lies, deceit, and, a media filled with prostitutes, as I like to call them, because that's what they are. They're pimps. They're liars. And they will say and do whatever the Democrat Party tells them to do. It's sickening, and hopefully it's going to end.
Oh, just extraordinary what we're watching in real time. We've seen Christy Walton coming out funding these advertisements in the New York Times for this No King situation. We had Laura Loomer come out and say that she lives in Mexico now in a mansion. I thought she lived in Wyoming. That itself is crazy talk. And of course, that the Walton family said, please don't run the ad. And apparently she did it anyway. I want to play you a clip now. This is the video I mentioned just a little while ago, explaining the illegal immigration process. The story behind the story, if you will. It's a quick 1.5 minutes. Take a look.
So do you want to know what all this craziness in LA is really about? The riots, the organized protests, and the current chaos unfolding in the sanctuary city known as Los Angeles? Well, it's not organic, and it's definitely not random. It's actually a calculated move by the leftist ruling class to protect the one thing that keeps them in power: census-based political control.
All right, we seem to have some troubles with that one. I'll let that reload and we might play that in a minute. Let's play now, see if this clip will work for you. This is Marco Rubio a short time ago.
Outside the White House in Washington, I have a statement in front of me from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He says this, quote,
No, we seem to have some glitches in the matrix, if you will. That doesn't really happen very often. Now, we've also just heard now that it's been confirmed that President Trump has told Fox News that he knew about Israel's strikes ahead of time and still wants negotiation talks with Iran. According to Brett Bayer on Fox, he says, I just spoke to President Trump. One thing, the president was aware of Israel's actions before it happened. He gave me a quote. He said, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. We're hoping to get back to the negotiation table. The president is looking to see if there is retaliation. The US will defend itself and Israel if Iran retaliates. Well, there you go. That is putting the line in the sand, Josh.
Yeah, clearly. Look, last night during the black tie affair, he was heading out, I guess, to the Kennedy Center, and he was wearing a bow tie and all that, and he was going into the limo, and somebody asked him a question, and he was gracious enough to answer that question before he got in the limo, and they said, why did you remove all the personnel from these embassies in the area? And he said, you'll just have to wait and see. So.
Exactly right. So he must have been knowing what's going on. Now, we've also learned that there was a 60-day warning, and today is day 61. So if you're going to FAFO, this is one of those scenarios. I find that extraordinary too, that there was no delay. There was obviously a warning, and they reacted. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, obviously, he's a deal maker, right? The deal maker in chief. He wants to do all these different deals, the art of the deal, all these great things. But the problem is that you can't deal with terrorists, especially the world's greatest sponsor of terrorists. And so when they don't listen and they don't negotiate, we've seen it time and time again, you cannot negotiate with these people. And so they wanted to enrich uranium. They kept doing it. They didn't stop. They wouldn't allow, years ago, the inspectors to come in. They kicked them out. And, we had this Iran deal, which was so lopsided. I don't know if you know this, but that lopsided Iran deal that we canceled years ago, do you know that there was language in that deal that the Obama administration put in there that said, if Israel was to do a preemptive attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, that the United States military was to back Iran, not Israel. There was actual language in that bill. That's how insane that bill was. So thank God President Trump ripped that thing up and tore it up into a million little pieces. Bottom line is President Trump's not playing around, and he wants peace, but he's going to get it peace through strength.
So just explain that again. So Iran was given a big pile of cash, an aeroplane full of cash, as part of this.
Which funded the October 7th attack.
And yet it was supposed to be to prevent a nuclear weapon being built? Isn't this the whole point of it? It's kind of like an economic trade-off. Is that right?
This prior administration, the Otto Penn administration, was the most anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and anti-Jewish administration in American history. They hated Netanyahu. They hate Israel. And they did everything they could to pretend to actually support their ally while backstabbing them and giving $6 billion to the Iranians, so that 6 months prior to October 7th in Beirut, Lebanon, they were able to take that money and they were able to plan and strategize that entire attack. So here we are. And I used to say years ago, if the United States of America and the government was smart and the military was smart, they would not share any information, and Israel should not share any information with the United States. No intelligence communications, nothing, because that regime could not be trusted. And there's a perfect example of why that mistrust was so prevalent.
Just extraordinary. Now, some more details coming through. Israeli military says it launched a wave of strikes against Iranian military and nuclear sites in a major escalation against Tehran. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has warned Israel that it must expect severe punishment following the crime of attacking Iran and killing several commanders and scientists. So there's your confirmation. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the military operation will continue as long as necessary. And Iranian authorities have suspended flights at Tehran's international airport as news outlets report that residential buildings have been struck in the Iranian capital. And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the US is not involved in the strikes and warns Iran against attacking American bases in the region. That would have been subject to that video clip that failed to play there, Josh.
Well, look, I think that, the Ayatollah is really not as powerful as people think he is. Okay, that's number one. He is surrounded by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is about 200,000 strong. What Israel is doing is hitting the IRG directly. They are going after the nuclear facilities. They are going after the nuclear scientists. So what they are doing is they are wiping out and eliminating all the people that can protect the mullahs, can protect the clerics, and can protect the Ayatollah. I think this is a brilliant strategy. And I think in the end, they're going to not only lose, but more importantly, there's a possibility that we could have peace in the Middle East, because if Iran is eliminated, and remember, they are responsible for the majority of sponsorship of terrorism throughout the entire world. If you remove that threat, then you have an opportunity with all the other countries and the Abraham Accords and the normalization of relationships to actually create a peaceful Middle East. Hopefully, and God willing, we can do that. And let's just hope that the Iron Dome does what it's supposed to do, which it certainly seems that it works each and every time.
So who is the real enemy at the end of the day across the world? Can we put it down to one particular person, or is it an ideology? What is the enemy of peace? Are we, for example, we look at satanic globalists. We look at cultural Marxism. We look at now. I quote him regularly, Dr. Gavin Ashenden, the former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth, who I interviewed back in the TNT days, and he explained that it was a triple threat. You had the Islamification of the UK, combining with the cultural Marxists and the globalist elites, all of whom were working together to change Western society as we know it. And then he said the problem is, and the fact was that he says, my Islamic friends told me that that was the plan. And I'd tell my friends and they would laugh at me and say it can't possibly be true. But he said the problem is that when you get the eventual takeover, you're going to get a situation where the globalist elites and the Islamic power aren't necessarily going to agree anymore. And then what are you going to do? And then the same with
you're
going
to get slaughtered and killed by the Chinese. That's what's going to happen. Look, the globalists, and I put the globalists, the World Economic Forum, obviously, Davos, I would say the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the DuPonts. I mean, there's so many of these families around the whole world. Alistair's, there's so many of these families, the 6, 7, 8 families, whatever it may be. But these are octogenarians. These are old people with a lot of money, obviously. But these are old people. They're not fighters. They're not warriors. What you got to worry about is you got to worry about the largest, most existential threat to not only the United States, but all of humanity. And that is China and the Communist Party and Xi Jinping. He, by himself, is the biggest threat to world peace on the planet. Hands down, no one's even close. And what they are doing and what they have been doing, I'll say this. One thing about communists, they have one trait that is superior. And you know what that trait is? Patience. They are a patient lot. And they are plotting and planning and strategizing and organizing. And President Trump, I called him out on this yesterday. You cannot do a deal with the devil, okay? Because that's who Xi Jinping is. He's the devil. And you cannot do a deal with the devil. And the fact that they're doing this whole rare earth thing and trade agreements and everything else, and then leaving 280,000 of these Chinese nationalists in our colleges, universities, and research centers, that is absolute insanity. And I do hope that people around the president, Peter Navarro, who I know, he's been on my show, many others that are experts in China, I hope that they're going to talk some sense into him and say, those 280,000 students need to go, because they're not students. They're infiltrators. They're part of the 1,000 Talents program. They're part of the Confucius Institutes. They are infiltrators. They are in, and we just had them arrested here recently, right, in Michigan for bioterrorism and pathogens that they're taking and smuggling back to the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. Okay, I'm somewhat of an expert on China myself. And so they are indeed the biggest existential threat. So to answer your question, no doubt about it, by 100 million%, it is China.
If we talk about Trump's strategy, therefore, about trying to bring peace to the world, is it through economic prosperity? And this is why he's trying to put these deals in place before these actions take place? Or is there some other motive there?
Well, look, I wouldn't say that George W. Bush was a phenomenal president by any stretch. But one thing that he's always said is that democracies don't attack each other. And he's kind of right. He's kind of right. But what President Trump is doing is he's taking the Reagan doctrine, peace through strength. We don't want war. We don't want to bomb you. We don't want to kill you. We want to be peaceful, and we want to create world peace. But we're going to do that through being strong. We want to have the most strongest, most capable, most lethal fighting force and military on the face of the earth, and hopefully never have to use it. That is the difference. We have done, as Americans, more for peace and liberty and prosperity with this much power, and have used it for such good than any other country on the world. And we will continue to do that.
Yeah, look, complicated, isn't it, when you try and unravel what's happening? But at the end of the day, like we said at the beginning of this outing, that we just want what's best for everyone, and we're all the same at that level. What role do you think Vladimir Putin can play, given his different relationship with Iran? Do you think he has a role here at all if this were to escalate?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I'm really not sure on that one, because I think there's a lot that would be at play there. If he was to somehow line up with Iran against the United States, things could get ugly quick. I hope and pray that that doesn't happen. I hope and pray the Chinese do not get involved in this either. Look, I'm just going by precedent in historical history here. Israel has done a similar operation in the past when they took out the Syrian nuclear facilities. I think, wasn't that in the 90s? It was way back when. I think it was in the 90s, 92, 93, whenever it was. I'm going by memory here. And so nothing happened from that. And so let's hope that the same thing happens. Look, I think the best outcome here would be to annihilate the power structure of the Iranian parliament, the Iranian government, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the mullahs, the clerics, the Ayatollah, and hopefully the people will finally be liberated and they can create their own new government. And typically, not always, but typically when something like that happens, not that we want to be nation builders here, okay? I'm a nationalist, but I don't believe in globalism as far as, getting involved in everybody's affairs unless there is an imminent threat. And so clearly there was an imminent threat. And so to eliminate that threat in order to facilitate peace afterwards was probably worth it, certainly, and I think was necessary because Israel had to do what they had to do because it's either them or Israel, and obviously it's going to be them.
Now, here's a report from Reuters from less than 48 hours ago. The heading there, Russia says it's ready to remove highly enriched uranium from Iran. That's a big deal, Josh, because if they have a relationship, Putin did come out only about a week ago and said that he also agreed that they shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. It's a really interesting point. And of course, the other side of this is that when you consider the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then you had the second group of them. And then, of course, you have the north-south transit corridor for Iran, this big railway that's being built there. I wonder if this resolves somehow with a very lucrative, constructive deal for the Iranian people. This is the point, isn't it? This is where we go with economic prosperity ruling the day. So it seems that there's enough positives out there, but there's also the line in the sand, and you can't do it without peace through strength. And therefore, it seems to favor the original plan of what President Trump is all about. So I feel like that whilst we can say there's imminent threat, we don't know what's happening, we're going to see chaos in the United States this weekend. Overall, I am 51% confident that this thing resolves itself one way or another. Disappointing that it has to get to this in the first place. But only yesterday, Iran said it was calling America's bluff. Well, it called it, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Look, we did reconstruction after World War II, right, in Europe. I mean, we helped them rebuild, obviously. And so maybe we would have to do the same thing with Iran and work with what's remaining and what's left. And hopefully what's left wants peace and not, war and everything else. So I hope and pray that this does not escalate through a world war conflict with other countries. I kind of think it won't, mainly because Iran is now becoming more and more and more isolated, not just in their thinking, not just in their ideology, but more importantly in the region, because we have so many more opportunities for economic development, as you mentioned. I mean, look, President Trump just came in to the Middle East and walked away with, what was it, $6-7 trillion for the United States of America. That's a total of $14 trillion worth of guaranteed investment into the United States of America. You can kiss BRICS goodbye, okay? Believe me when I tell you that BRICS is going to be a thing of the past. BRICS will be bricks on a mortar on a building. It's not going to stand for anything anymore. Trust me on that. $14 trillion worth of money coming in, $5 million gold cards being sold. They sold 2,150 of them already. Think about the amount of money that's coming into the United States for the upcoming golden age. It's going to be amazing. And you know what's going to happen is we're going to help a lot of these people in the Middle East and around the world, get back into a situation of economic development. And it kind of goes to what George W. Bush said. He wasn't a great president, but he had a great quote. Democracies don't attack each other typically.
It's extraordinary. 2,150 $5 million Trump cards, gold cards, if you will.
That's correct, according to Howard Lutnick. Yeah.
That's $11 billion already raised right there.
That's correct.
And so if you extrapolate that again and multiply that by another 1,000, if you had 2 million people, you would pretty much be on the way to wiping out your national debt. Whether or not there's 2 million people with $5 million is another question. But it is interesting nonetheless, and it shows you what people are prepared to do to get into the US.
This gold card, by the way, is absolutely the best way to do immigration. Because think about it. You get these kids from China, from India, from Europe, from wherever they're coming from, right? They come into our American universities and they go to our schools, they get a degree, and then what? They don't necessarily get a job right away. Sometimes they do, and let's say they do. But how long do they have to work and build before they can really be a big contributor to the U.S. economy, before they would open up their own business and their own shop or their own asset management company or whatever it may be? Why not just take the best of the best from other countries? For instance, maybe some billionaires in Australia or New Zealand or Tasmania or, anywhere else in Europe or India or wherever they may be, that are already established, that already have a business, they're already making money. And you say, hey, look, give us, $5 million and you can come into the country. You can bring your business. You have to hire Americans to work for your companies, right? And what happens? We vet them, obviously. We've got to make sure we know that they're not part of a terrorist regime or, they have any bad associations. But then these people come here and they instantly and immediately contribute to the American economy. That is such a better way of doing things. Howard Lutnick is the absolute secret genius behind the Trump administration. Besides Marco Rubio, one of the best cabinet members, in my opinion.
The funny thing about Howard Lutnick is that he was the survivor out of Cantor Fitzgerald in the attacks on September 11. He lost, hundreds of staff. He lost his own brother.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. And I tell you what, if there was ever going to be a truth coming out about 9/11, you would expect that Howard Lutnick, that would be the icing on the cake for that man. Very, very interesting. Some more news we're getting coming through. Iran's command and control remains in place, according to an expert. They have then reported, so continuing with his interview, CSIS Daranaini said Iran's military structure remains intact despite the loss of key leaders like Hossein Salameh, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He said this is a big loss for Iran, but the command and control structure remains in place. No matter whether one or two top military commanders are assassinated, the structure remains intact. Iran is in the process of making a fateful decision in the hours to come. There will be retaliation, this time very much different from the previous ones, he said. Ali Akbar Darani, a researcher at the Center for Strategic Studies, said that Israel's attack is a declaration of a war on Iran, likely made with the approval of the White House. So they are putting the two in the basket there. So this is the threat of said escalation. Well, there it is. We will obviously watch in the hours to come with what's going on, Josh.
Well, look, I don't know what time it is now, but maybe 5 minutes from now, they might not have the ability and the capabilities to even respond to the attack. Israel is continuing to just hammer Tehran right now. They're hitting them as hard as possible. This is an onslaught that is not going to let up until the objective is done, which is to eliminate the threat and kill the head of the snake. For many, many years, we've been fighting a proxy. Israel has been retaliating against a proxy, right? Israel's been retaliating against Hamas. Israel's been retaliating against Hezbollah. Well, guess what? Now that they've wiped out Hezbollah, or 90% of Hezbollah, they've wiped out Hamas. Now, guess what? Now it's time to go after the head of the snake and take out the head of the snake. And once the head of the snake is gone, whatever's left hopefully wants peace. That's it.
And that is it. And that's the point here. So we are seeing Israel attacking Iran, taken out a number of nuclear sites. We've heard and reports of multiple nuclear scientists and military leaders taken out. We have gone through the process here, compared it, of course, to peace and the plan for prosperity and peace through strength in the United States ahead of this No Kings protests that will go ahead at the weekend in the United States. And we know that there is Josh Hawley came out and said he wants to know who's funding this. The president said he wants to know who's funding this. And so we'll see what really becomes of it. We've had a judge come out and say that the National Guard must be returned to California for Californian control. But President Trump, at the last minute, he's been able to get a reprieve on that and will still control, which is very important going into these protests at the weekend. And we will see what kind of destruction is going out there. We've also had multiple reports of people saying that they were offered $200 each per day to participate in these particular protests, and were told to be professional agitators and then some to really shake things up. So the question remains, will Trump call martial law as a result of insurrection? This is also on the table here. We are living in turbulent, tumultuous times. Josh, we watch on in earnest. Thank you for your time for this special show today. It's been brilliant once again.
Anytime, any topic. Folks, please go become a member of my Substack. If you like my commentary today, you'll love my Substack. I do a show 7 days a week. I don't take a day off from doing a video. I make sure that I do a show 7 days a week, because the left never takes a day off from trying to destroy this country. So if you want jaw-dropping commentary, information that is bold, brave, and in your face and unapologetic, join the Substack at JBU Show at substack.com. God bless.
And there you go. There is Josh's book there, Preserving
Liberty.
Liberty.
You want to read 150 pages that will literally put your jaw on the ground with everything you read. And again, Jason's read it, so he knows. Go get this book, 150 pages. Make sure you got a nice brand new yellow highlighter in your hand, because you're going to be highlighting this book. You will learn 10 years worth of policy and everything you could imagine that you had no idea is in this one little book.
Fabulous. Well, Josh, thanks for your time today on the Daily Australian. Our special report here. You can check out our regular shows with Nicola Charles Monday to Friday. The latest one has been uploaded just recently. It is a monster, almost 100 minutes today of jam-packed news, a lot of Australian news that you'll want to check out, as well as commentary from all stories around the world. We go to the US, we go to Canada, we are in the UK, we are all around the place, of course, reporting, and of course, this big report today on Israel's attack on Iran. Have a great weekend, and we will continue to bring you news as we see it, but I'll see you all Monday. Otherwise, thanks, Josh. Thanks, everyone, for watching.
God bless.